Rohit Mehra and Ananya Mehra left India believing Canada would give them safety, success, and a fresh start. But behind the quiet walls of their suburban home, a secret affair was already pulling them toward a violent end no one saw coming. Rohit and Ananya Mehra arrived in Canada carrying more hope than luggage. Leaving India had felt like a brave decision, one that promised stability, safety, and a future free from struggle. Canada welcomed them with wide roads, quiet neighborhoods, and a sense of order they had never experienced before. They rented a modest house on a peaceful suburban street, where mornings were calm and nights passed without noise. To the outside world, their life appeared settled and secure, exactly what they had worked so hard to achieve. Rohit had quickly found work in a logistics company. His days were long and demanding, often starting before sunrise and ending late at night. He believed hard work was the price of success, especially in a new country where proving yourself mattered. Ananya, on the other hand, found a position managing accounts for an import-export firm. Her job offered flexibility, international contacts, and a sense of independence she had not fully experienced before. At first, they shared excitement over every small achievement, from their first Canadian paycheck to buying second-hand furniture for their home. As months passed, the excitement slowly faded. Their schedules no longer matched and shared meals became rare. Rohit returned home exhausted, while Ananya spent more time on her laptop, answering emails late into the night. The house remained clean and quiet, but something invisible began to grow between them. It was not anger or open conflict, but a steady emotional distance that neither of them addressed. Silence replaced conversations, and routine replaced connection. Neighbors described them as polite and reserved. They waved, kept their lawn tidy, and never caused trouble. There were no loud arguments, no visible signs of stress, yet inside the home, the air felt heavy. Ananya felt lonely despite being surrounded by opportunity. Rohit felt pressure building as financial responsibilities increased. Both believed their sacrifices were temporary and necessary, but neither realized how fragile their bond had become. Ananya's work brought her into constant contact with people outside Canada. Emails, reports, and virtual meetings filled her days. She felt seen and appreciated for her skills, something that quietly mattered more than she admitted. Rohit remained focused on stability, unaware that emotional needs were being ignored on both sides. Their marriage did not collapse suddenly. It weakened slowly, almost unnoticed. By the end of their first year in Canada, their home held two people living parallel lives. Dreams that once connected them now pulled them in different directions. What looked like a calm beginning was actually the foundation of something far darker. Small choices made without fear were already setting the stage for events that would later shock an entire nation. The quiet suburban street, once a symbol of safety, would soon become known for a crime no one saw coming. Ananya's workdays grew busier as the import business expanded beyond Canada. New suppliers, new contracts, and new partnerships demanded constant communication. Among these connections was Daniel Brooks, an American business partner responsible for coordinating shipments and payments from the United States. At first, their interactions were strictly professional. Emails focused on numbers, deadlines, and missing documents. Video meetings were short and formal, leaving no space for anything beyond work. Over time, the frequency of their communication increased. Time zone differences pushed conversations into late hours, moments when Ananya was alone in the quiet house. Daniel showed interest in her ideas and praised her problem-solving skills. These small gestures made her feel valued in ways she had not felt for a long time. Without realizing it, she began looking forward to those messages more than anything else in her day. What started as professional respect slowly turned into emotional dependence. The shift was subtle. Conversations drifted away from spreadsheets and logistics toward personal frustrations and ambitions. Ananya shared stories about adjusting to life in Canada, while Daniel spoke about the pressures of maintaining his business in the U.S. The distance between them made everything feel safe and unreal, as if consequences did not exist. There were no witnesses, no sudden changes in behavior that others could easily notice. The affair grew quietly, hidden behind the appearance of routine work. As the bond deepened, Ananya's priorities began to shift. She spent more time online, guarded her phone closely, and became more distracted during the few moments she shared with Rohit. She convinced herself that nothing harmful was happening, believing emotional connection did not count as betrayal. Yet her decisions became riskier. She approved financial adjustments without proper oversight, trusting Daniel's assurances without question. These choices tied her personal feelings directly to business operations. Daniel, facing financial trouble of his own, leaned heavily on Ananya's access and authority. What he presented as temporary solutions were actually dangerous shortcuts. Money moved faster than it should have, and records became increasingly complex. Ananya felt trapped between loyalty and fear. The affair had crossed a line where walking away no longer felt simple. Every secret demanded another secret to protect it. The relationship no longer felt exciting, it felt urgent. Late, night calls carried tension rather than comfort. Ananya sensed the situation slipping beyond her control, but stepping back meant exposure. She underestimated how much Daniel had to lose and how far someone under pressure might go. What she believed was a private escape from loneliness was now shaping decisions that affected multiple lives. By the time she recognized the danger, the affair was deeply woven into financial trails and hidden agreements. There was no clean ending, no quiet way out. The choices made in private were slowly building toward a public disaster. What seemed like a harmless emotional connection was becoming the trigger for events that would soon turn deadly, leaving no space for regret or reversal. It began to sense that something in his life was no longer stable. It was not a single moment, but a series of small irregularities that unsettled him. Bank notifications arrived at odd hours, and balances did not always match his expectations. At first, he blamed the complexity of settling into a new country, convincing himself that confusion was normal. Still, an uneasy feeling followed him, lingering even during his busiest workdays. At home, Ananya seemed distant and distracted. Her attention was often fixed on her phone or laptop, even during moments they once shared easily. Had noticed that she became careful with her words, avoiding discussions about finances or future plans. There were no arguments, no obvious signs of conflict, but the silence between them felt heavier than before. He wondered if stress from work was affecting her, yet something told him the problem ran deeper. Had decided to quietly review their financial records. What he found only increased his concern. Transactions linked to unfamiliar accounts appeared repeatedly, and some payments lacked clear explanations. The amounts were not small enough to ignore. He felt torn between confronting the issue and protecting the fragile peace of their home. Doubt slowly replaced trust, and trust, once damaged, became difficult to restore. Meanwhile, Daniel's situation across the border was unraveling. His business deals were collapsing under mounting losses and regulatory pressure. The money connected to Ananya's company had become a lifeline he could not afford to lose. What began as a professional relationship fueled by personal attachment now carried serious consequences. The more pressure Daniel faced, the more desperate his actions became. He relied on secrecy and speed, believing exposure would destroy everything he had built. Ananya found herself trapped between two growing forces. On one side was her marriage, fragile but still present. On the other was a man whose future now depended on her silence and cooperation. The weight of her choices began to show in subtle ways. She slept poorly, made careless mistakes, and grew increasingly anxious. The excitement that once surrounded the affair was gone, replaced by fear and uncertainty. His suspicions deepened when he noticed patterns he could no longer explain away. Late night activity, sudden schedule changes, and unexplained expenses painted a picture he did not want to accept. Still, he hesitated. He feared what the truth might reveal and what it could cost them both. That hesitation would later prove costly. By the time all three lives became dangerously intertwined, there was no clear path forward. Financial risk, emotional betrayal, and fear of exposure collided quietly beneath the surface. Each person believed they were acting to protect themselves, unaware that these hidden decisions were pushing them closer to an irreversible outcome. What remained unseen was already shaping the tragedy to come, long before anyone realized how close they were to disaster. The quiet suburban street woke to flashing lights and police vehicles lined along the curb. The Mehra house, once unremarkable, had become the center of intense attention. Inside, investigators found Rohit and Ananya lifeless, their deaths clearly the result of a violent act. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, and no struggle visible from outside. The scene immediately suggested that whoever committed the crime had entered willingly, or had been allowed inside without suspicion. Police secured the area as forensic teams began their work. Every room was examined carefully, from the neatly arranged living space to the bedroom where critical evidence was later found. The house showed signs of planning rather than chaos. Valuables were untouched, ruling out robbery. This was not a random act. The calm order of the home made the violence feel even more disturbing, as if the attack had been calculated and controlled. As news spread, the community reacted with shock. Neighbors struggled to understand how something so brutal could happen in a place known for safety. Rohit and Ananya had kept to themselves, rarely hosting guests, which made the lack of forced entry even more puzzling. Investigators focused on people with personal or professional access to the couple. Phone records, emails, and financial documents quickly became central to the case. What investigators uncovered shifted the direction of the inquiry. Ananya's digital trail revealed extensive communication with an American contact. Travel records showed unexplained meetings, and financial data pointed to irregular money transfers connected to cross-border business deals. These findings raised serious concerns about fraud and motive. The case expanded beyond a domestic crime into an international investigation involving financial misconduct and personal betrayal. Canadian authorities coordinated with U.S. agencies as the scope widened. The evidence suggested that the murders were tied to more than emotional conflict. Someone had a strong reason to silence both Rohit and Ananya. Investigators believed the timing of the crime was critical, occurring just as financial audits and internal reviews were approaching. Exposure seemed imminent, and fear appeared to be the driving force. Security footage from nearby streets provided partial answers. A vehicle was seen entering the area during the early hours and leaving shortly after. The driver was not a stranger to the couple. This detail reinforced the theory that trust played a key role in the crime. Whoever planned the attack knew the routines of the household and chose a moment when resistance would be minimal. As investigators pieced together the events, the case transformed from a shocking local murder into a complex web of deception, pressure, and calculated violence. The quiet house stood as evidence that danger does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives through familiar doors, carried by secrets that have grown too heavy to contain. The investigation moved quickly once connections between the murders and the American business partner became clear. What had begun as a shocking domestic crime slowly revealed a deeper, darker truth. Ananya's affair was not simply an emotional betrayal. It had triggered a chain of decisions that crossed borders, mixing personal desire with financial desperation. Each new piece of evidence added weight to a picture of manipulation, fear, and greed. Authorities discovered that Daniel Brooks had been struggling to keep his failing business afloat. The financial losses he faced in the United States were significant, and some of the money tied to Ananya's company had been redirected to cover these shortfalls. The affair had become more than a personal connection. It was now a vehicle for fraud and a desperate attempt to recover what was being lost. Every meeting, every message, and every financial transaction revealed a growing risk that could no longer remain hidden. Ananya's role in the unfolding tragedy became painfully clear. While her initial involvement had started as emotional escape, it gradually pulled her into schemes that were beyond her control. Late night approvals, confidential communications, and secret financial arrangements tied her directly to actions that, if exposed, could destroy lives and reputations. She had underestimated the danger that came with mixing trust and opportunity with secrecy. What seemed like a private choice had become a public threat. The investigators pieced together the timeline of the murders, revealing a chilling pattern of planning and execution. The couple's deaths were not spontaneous, but the result of careful orchestration. The person responsible understood both the risks and the vulnerabilities in the couple's routine. Every step was calculated to prevent interference, eliminate witnesses, and ensure silence. The crime had a cold efficiency that suggested fear and self-preservation were stronger than morality or conscience. As the case came to a close, the motives became undeniable: fear of exposure, financial ruin, and the tangled web of betrayal had combined to create a deadly situation. What had started as an emotional affair escalated into a series of irreversible actions. Secrets that had seemed minor at first had compounded into a catastrophic outcome. The story served as a grim reminder of how private decisions can spiral into public tragedy, and how easily trust can be weaponized when mixed with desperation. For the community, the aftermath left a lingering sense of unease. The quiet suburban street, once a symbol of safety and order, would forever carry the memory of what had happened within that home. Neighbors reflected on the hidden struggles that often go unnoticed behind closed doors, and authorities emphasized the importance of vigilance in both personal and professional relationships. In the end, the case closed with a haunting clarity. Rohit and Ananya's deaths were not random. They were the consequence of choices made in secrecy, fueled by desire, fear, and the ambition of another. The truth revealed a human vulnerability that crossed continents, showing how small acts of deception can lead to unimaginable consequences. It was a story of trust broken, lives destroyed, and the dark reality that sometimes the most dangerous threats come from those we think we know best.